So, hello everybody. I'll give people a minute to come in and settle down. But thank you all for coming this evening. Thank you, first of all, to sorry. Hello everyone. My name is Gareth Bryn, and welcome to Unapologetic's first ever panel since the launch of our magazine. I'd like to thank, first of all, Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival for gladly giving us this space to talk about the magazine, social issues in Ireland, and just everything else that we have planned for this evening. I'm thankful to everyone here tonight as well who have given up an hour of their evening to come and be part of this. I'm thankful to all of you on Facebook or Zoom that have decided to come and join us on this crazy journey. It's been an absolutely wild couple of months, and the fact now that we're here at this point is completely unbelievable. So what I'll do is, to start it off, I'll introduce myself. As I said, my name is Gareth Bryn, and I'm a technical writer based out of Limerick, but I'm also one of the co-founders and co-editors-in-chief of Unapologetic, which is, if some of you may know, a new multidisciplinary and cultural magazine that has just been gone up live on our website at unapologetic.net for about 24 hours now, and it is very surreal for me. I'll go around now and introduce each member of our panel. So to begin, we have Sandrine Uwaso Ndahiro. Sandrine is an English PhD student at the University of Limerick. Sandrine research centers on third-generation African writers, such as Afrofuturists, who have emerged during the era of late liberalism and have introduced multiple and nuanced perspectives for reflecting on African lives and aspirations. She recently co-produced a documentary called On Silencing Black Voices, which details the personal stories and accounts by members of the Black community in Ireland. Sandrine's work now highlights the lived experience of the Black and Irish community in her recent publication of her essay, Irishness Does Not Mean Whiteness. I also know Sandrine is a continuous contributor to Rogue magazine as well. There's absolutely no stopping her. Then we have Meg, who is, well, Sandrine is also a co-founder and editor-in-chief of Unapologetic. Left out the most important bit. But we also have Meg, who is our third co-founder and co-editor-in-chief of Unapologetic. But as well as that, Meg is the Glucksman Professor of Contemporary Writing in English at the University of Limerick. She specialized in 20th and 21st century Irish and American literature in English, especially poetry, and with particular attention to gender, race, and class. One abiding focus is on the occult life and work of W.B. Yeats. She is also the editor of 7 books and numerous essays. We also have Mary Conlon. Mary is the founder and artistic director of Ormston House, a cultural resource centre here in Limerick City, where she has curated or produced 70 exhibitions and projects, working with over 300 artists aged 8 to 82 from 30 countries. She was the inaugural international curator in residence of the Oris Bildencook Center in Denver, and the artistic director of Memory of Water, the Creative Europe project in 6 international cities. In 2019, she was nominated to the Arts Council Peer Panel, and in 2020, she was elected by the Public Participation Network to the Local Government Strategic Policy Committee for Community, Leisure and Culture. Also in 2020, she was selected for the Helsinki International Curators Programme by Frame Finland and HIAP, and for the Cultural Leadership Programme by the Trans Europe Halls. And finally, we have Ashley. Ashley is a writer, producer, and co-founder of the Galpal Collective, an art and multimedia collective created to highlight and celebrate the work of marginalised and diverse young creatives in Ireland. Ashley has always been interested in the arts, having studied both musical theatre and acting in her youth. And during that time, she has worked with Tala Community Arts, Eurobogue Lithuania and Ireland, Tala Young Filmmakers, Rua Red Youth Art Council, and Noise Flicks Film Festival, and her International Film Festival. She's currently in her second year of journalism studies at Technical University Dublin, Ireland's largest media training centre. Also, Aisha could not be here tonight, which is unfortunate, but I am forever thankful for those of us who could make it tonight. But so anyway, let's move on. But you know, this is my first time hosting a panel. But I think a fun point to start would be just for myself, Meg, and Centrine, just to briefly talk about how we chose the board members whom Mary of Unapologetic, both of whom Mary and Ashley sit upon the board with us. The board's main function is to offer guidance and support to Unapologetic throughout this journey, and I can safely say that they have done that throughout the entire journey. When picking the board, well, you've heard their bios. We couldn't have asked for more incredible people to join us on this journey. In particular, I believe for me, Ormston House, being from Limerick City, has always been such a focal point for me. I always see it on my journeys through town. But I think for me, the board members, they had to be people who are inspiring, that every day myself and Sandrine would talk about them, or myself and Meg would talk about them. And the likes of Mary and Ashley and all the other wonderful board members that we have inspire me every single day. And the fact that these people had faith and support in our vision was something that I didn't believe could happen. To have some of your heroes say that I believe in you was something that I could never imagine could happen. So it was just, I wanted people that could inspire me, and boy, did I get that, and I'm forever thankful for that. So maybe Sandrine, would you like to explain how we ended up with this board as well?
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree with you. It's in regards to inspiration, but it was kind of people who had already been doing the work that Unapologetic wanted to accomplish, like which were already, again, like really focusing on harboring and like harvesting multi-ethnic voices and stuff like that. So I think like when we were picking the board members, it was people that again have already had experience in this and had already been like pioneer in the fact that again academic artists, activists, and writers could all engage in these. So yeah, like as Garrett said, I think when we first came up with it, we're like, no, they're going to say no, because again, it was kind of like, okay, we're gonna come up with all of these together. We've never done a magazine, but like just trust the process, it'll be fine. So, but as I said, like everyone that we approached was so helpful. And even for those who couldn't do it, like they're still offered to like peer review, everything like that. So there was a very collaborative element of it. And by the time, like, yeah, when the magazine launched yesterday, it was like, of course it launched because we had so much guidance, and there was always someone be like, okay, you can do it, even if the first issue goes sideways, like you're still like for like managing to do that. So it was really just picking people where already like they've championed their sense of like having marginalized and minority voices and have already seen that, and then again they've been amplifying all of their work throughout.
Okay, perfect. And Meg, what about yourself?
Well, I mean, I absolutely echo what both of you have said, that choosing people who, you know, who had the vision with us, who could dream and were and are tremendously supportive, and also people who were already doing work. We also tried, I think, and we got this. Sandrine mentioned our sort of different, I suppose, modes of creative expression. You know, we wanted a magazine that was partially, that had academics talking to creatives, talking to artists, you know, talking to activists, and so we had people from a range of ways of work and kinds of working, and also yeah, different disciplines. The academics on the board are from different disciplines and different specialties, you know, within their area. So we tried to get a kind of, you know, broad a broad board so that we would have many different points of view and voices.
Perfect.
So that leads us then to the first question. So this would be for Ashley and Mary. So I'll start with you, Ashley. What were your thoughts and feeling when we approached you for the idea of starting Unapologetic?
I think for me, like, if you watch, like, especially like Sandrine, like, I've been such like an admirer of your work over the last year and a half. So like this felt like such a natural progression for you. I think I was just taken aback by the fact that like you're asking me to be a part of it. And then especially when you look at the board, these are like really established like doctors and creators, and I felt, oh my god, there's like little old me. And like I felt like it was really out of my depth, but obviously you reached out to both me and Aisha and Galpal to be supporters because you saw something there in us that would be valuable. So like I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to take part. Of course I want to be a part of this, because my biggest thing is I don't think that there's not enough room for all of us. That there's no this thing of competition, this thing of, oh, there can only be so many magazines, there can only be so many writers. I think that's crap. I think it's ridiculous. I think there's a space for everybody, and so to champion for that, so to be able to support somebody else who also has that same vision, like it was a no-brainer. I had to be involved.
Yeah, and I think you've clearly highlighted that in regards to we're in such like an cultural landscape now, like where again, like all these new exciting things are coming up, and it's really important to like champion those and celebrate those and support those, as opposed to feeling like a sense of threat, because again, like we all have the same mission and we all have the same vision of, again, like making Ireland like more diverse and more inclusive. So like definitely, and that's the same, that's how we feel about Galpal as well. And what about yourself, Mary?
Just to mute myself. Thanks for that gorgeous introduction, both of you. I was getting a little bit teary there for a moment. It was really, really lovely. So thank you. The first thing I thought when I received your invitation was like, I want to read this. Literally, that was the first thing. And I feel the same as Ashley. I just felt really honored at the invitation and really grateful that you recognized, as at Ormston House been an organized, like a support structure, that this was a space that could support you, that this was yours as much as ours. And I feel really proud that you asked me and to be part of it. And when I saw the other board members, I was like Ashley, I was like, wow, okay, this is an impressive group of people who really want to support you. And I just was delighted. I mean, I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, yes, you know. So and as I said, the first thought, like when you were explaining what you wanted to do, was like, I want to read this.
Yeah, so then that kind of goes to just with everyone in regards to like, what was your thoughts in the sense of bringing together academic, artists, activists, and creatives? Because like as already stated, like before, they all exist by themselves, and we really wanted to put them in conversation with each other. Because like I remember myself, like last year was like would have been the first time that I was like, oh, okay, so I'm kind of going into this activist, but then I'm also an academic, but I wanted to like juggle the two. And again, like I always really struggled when it came to writing like personal essays, like which voice do I adopt? Because again, an academic voice, it's very different from an activist voice. And I think like when we were coming up with Unapologetic, like myself, Gareth and Meg, like we really wanted people to just explore all these sides of them. So I can start with you, Meg, in regards to the idea of bringing together all these voices.
I went to a conference years ago in America. It was in Latin America, and it had that concatenation of people, and it was so moving to be. It was in Argentina, and to have straight-on academics, but also whose ideas were being fed and then were feeding back to artists who were trying to express things that in some places and times in Argentina, you know, are very nearly inexpressible. And also having the activists, there were demonstrations at the thing, and just to have all of these different kinds of ways of exploring something really complicated felt I'm an academic myself, as you know, and to me it was completely liberating. I thought we put these people into little separate stables, but we could all be working together, and we could all be enjoying ourselves together. I mean, you know, for me, there's a great element of just pure pleasure in the freedom of expression that, you know, it feels like this, to me, it feels like this magazine just opens a door, and, you know, things are already there just waiting. So that's the way I felt about it. I find it very exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely. What about yourself, Ashley?
Yeah, like I really just have to echo like what Meg said. Like I think so often we are thought as like arts and academia as being like separate, like completely separate mediums. And especially when it comes to activism. But I think like history has shown us that that's genuinely not the case. Like I wouldn't consider like Martin Luther King and like Malcolm X to be any less of an activist than like a Nina Simone or Billie Holiday. But like just because the mediums in which they did their work were different doesn't mean that they weren't spreading the same powerful message. And I think it's so like ingenious almost, just because nobody would think to bring all of those together. But when you bring them together, like it makes sense, because just because the wording in this is different or the format of this is different, it doesn't mean that somebody's voice and somebody's medium is any less important. So it felt like it just made sense to me when you see it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you touched on the point in regards to like, yeah, the formatting and everything like that. I feel like those are things that, again, like kind of makes people shy away from collaboration. But like we saw here, like the power of getting everyone involved, because again, like just even though the magazine is out like 24 hours, but just looking at the sheer magnitude of like responses we've gotten, like again, it's just people wouldn't have thought like, oh, this person is in conversation with that, like again, but that was like the main vision of it. And I'll come to you next, Gareth.
Yeah, so like, yeah, my big thing was just trying to bring these people together, because I think, as Meg was saying, like we're put into such separate kind of stables, and I just didn't want that anymore. I was like, how could, like, if we're separating people, like social issues affect everyone. It doesn't matter of your background, like it obviously depends on the social issue, but like no matter what your profession is, like it's going to affect you. And so I wanted to bring everyone together, because I just felt like if we keep separating these groups of people, we're never going to get to the core of the problem, because they're not talking to each other. So I wanted to bring those people together to show like we can build a much bigger picture of what's happening in society today by bringing these people together. And even in the magazine, I wanted to be, and we agreed on this, to be more fluid, not just like academic essays, poetry, personal. There had to be a fluidity to it to show that like these pieces can all exist together. And for someone like me, that like yourself, Sandrine, I was coming from straight out of college, so academic writing, and then being a technical writer, which is a whole different ball game on top of that, to personal writing. I ended up somewhere kind of in the middle, that I really didn't know where to put that work. And I always think of, I think it was Lin-Manuel Miranda said that he never saw a place for himself on Broadway, so he made one. So that's what I did as well. I decided there's no place for me in this world. Nobody's going to publish me. I might as well just publish myself. Like, just completely do that. So that's why I wanted to bring people together. I wanted to show that we can all exist together, whether you're just somebody sitting at home that got frustrated one day at some social issue in Ireland, or if you're an academic who's been researching it for years, that those two thoughts are equally valid and they can exist in the same space. They don't have to be separated in any shape or form. And it was an absolutely crazy idea to bring all these groups of people together, but I'm glad it paid off. I'll always remember when we approached Chiamaka, who is also on the board and a wonderful creative writer. When I did the pitch, I remember adding the line saying, "Oh, and you know what, we might be a little bit crazy." And I remember at the end of it, she looked at us and just went, "Yes, you're definitely crazy." And I went, "Yeah." But you know what? You have to be a little bit crazy. This was a big venture, and I'm thankful for everyone that's joined on board for bringing these groups of people together and showing Ireland and anybody who wants to listen that we can all exist together, at least in some space.
Yeah, no, and I think that was like the main element of it in regards to like even with the sheer magnitude of contributors that we got, like where a lot of the pieces like they had already been written, but like they just didn't know where to publish them. So we saw that like with the art pieces, like where again I think it was only a week before publication, and it was like, oh, I had this art piece laying around, I didn't know where to put it straight away. Do you know, like even the night before, our youngest contributor sent in her dad sent in an art piece at like 1 a.m. and was like, please just consider it, and we put it in. So like it really did show that people were listening. And because I remember like looking at the email and it was like 11-year-old, and I just saw the name and I was like, I got so emotional because I was like, that's it, like, you know, like how cool is it that like you're 11 and you're published in a magazine, you know, and it's like you're a migrant and that's there like from that age, because then it kind of acts as that, you know, like that stepping ground that we really wanted to create, where it was like we want people to kind of look back and be like, that was the first place I published. And like again, it just normalized this thing of your voice matters, and again, like any art of expression really matters. So I remember like that being like the final moment at like 1 a.m. when everything was together, like one last piece came in, we're like, we can't leave it out. So like, you know, as I say, people already had something to say. And just lastly, what about yourself, Mary?
Yeah, I was really struck when I was talking to you, Gareth, last week, precisely about this, that you were saying when you did the call, there was quite a lot of the contributors, like I had this thing and there was no place for it, you know, and they recognized Unapologetic as this is a new space, it belongs, you know, where this belongs. And that more than that several contributors were like, I have this thing, where does it go? And, you know, you've done something very special here by creating that space for people. So, and I was kind of curious about like bringing these different fields together, these kind of like almost siloed specializations. And I was kind of curious, how would you reach them? Like, are you connected in with those groups? Who would, you know, submit? Because we all work in quite different formats, right? Like activists or visual arts, and there's a process, and academics. So I was curious who was going to submit. Was it going to be, you know, well, in academia, we do it this way, or in the visual arts, you know, this is the process. But it seems that like, you were able to reach these groups, that people were like, I have something to contribute, like, and just looking at the magazine, it's only been up for 24 hours, but it's a beautiful thing to look at. You know, it just feels like a whole. I think the design is just so well presented, and it just makes sense as you go through it, and how you've laid it out. You've thought so carefully about that, and actually, you know, and that's an important thing. I know it seems minor, but actually just the experience of, you know, opening and going through it, and like we were saying just before we went live here, that sound of the swooshing of pages going across, like all these, like this attention to detail is just really important, and just shows how much you care about it as well. But I think again, in terms of the different groups, it's just like you're connecting dots, and you're, as well as people, but like, and just different ways of thinking. And I think you've created a space for that to happen.
I also think it's the perfect point to thank our designer, Anthony Carey, who works hours upon hours, and we can never thank him enough for the amount of work that he put into the magazine and the website. So Tony, if you're listening, thank you very much. We'll forever be appreciative of the work that you did for us.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with what everyone is saying, because I think our main element of it was, again, to just create this new community, because like, as we already stated, like all these different people already existed. And again, some of them were interacting with each other, but others weren't. So it was really important to just create this sense of community. So where we're kind of showcasing like how it's such a possible thing. So like if there's another social issue that a different group wants to talk about, they know now that, oh, academics are actually approachable. Oh, activists are approachable. Artists are approachable. Like there's that sense of, as Ashley would have stated, like there's so much more room to just create more spaces like Unapologetic. Like there's no point to like compete about that, because again, as Gareth would have stated, like there's different social issues that need to be addressed by different people in society. So we're kind of showcasing like that possibility and that willingness that people really, really have, because I think that's the important thing. Because it's one thing to have an idea, but at the end of the day, you still need people that are like, okay, yeah, I don't know where you're going, but sure, we'll stick to that. So the next question just looks at like, what do you think of the reception that Unapologetic has received so far? So like, what does this reception say about Ireland today? So I'll come to you first, Ashley.
It's been like so rewarding, like scrolling through Twitter and seeing everybody like sharing, like retweeting it or on Instagram and stuff. And I think for me, it just shows we've all repeated it, like these people existed, like everybody has a voice. And the barrier for most people isn't that they're not a good writer, and it's not that they don't have something to say, is that they've never been given a place to say it that made sense. I think so often, like as writers or as activists or as creators, like we're put in certain boxes, or like you happen to be into one social issue, so that's the social issue that you're forced to talk about for the rest of your life. But people are more like complex than that, and I think it just shows that like people need spaces to be able to voice how they feel, and spaces to be nurtured as well as creating. Because again, like there's an industry standard, and like we live in such a nepotism-based country in which, where if you don't have that the experience and you don't have those connections, well, it's like that's it, it's kind of done for you. So more spaces like this just like act as the stepping stone for so many people. So like I'm excited to see like in 10 years time, like who contributed to the first edition, like what are they going to be doing in 10 years, like where would they've been able to go just because one person decided to take that chance and be like, yeah, we'll take your piece, we want to publish you. I think yeah, it makes me feel all warm inside. I'm just really excited about it.
You know, we definitely echo that in regards to, like, I've always said it, if I see anyone on like I don't know, Oprah or something like that, I was like, they better be thanking Unapologetic because again, it just acts like that. Because I remember like the sheer joy I felt like when I published like my first personal essay, and again just being like, oh, like crap, like my voice really matters. But like again, to what Ashley said, I think once I published that, which was to do with racism, I was like, oh, I don't want to just be publishing to do with that. Like I have so many things that I want to say. And again, like as you say, certain, just the way it is in society, certain publications will only be like, okay, we'll publish you if you talk about this. So it was really important again to just tap into the complexities of people and everything like that. So it was definitely very important. And I'll come to you, Meg, in regards to just like the reception and what does this say about Ireland?
Well, I hope you won't be too embarrassed, Sandrine, but we had a meeting, and Sandrine recalled that when we first sent the call out, Sandrine, as you know, knows a lot of people. she has her fingers in lots of pies. And she said, I was so excited that people started responding, and they weren't people that I already knew, you know. There's a big, I mean, we've said this before, but it was one of those, you know, if you build it, they will come kind of moments, you know. It turned out, the risk was, were we correct in thinking that Ireland is a more complicated place, and that there's than all of the narratives often make room for, and that if we just open a space, people will say, hey, here I am, I'd like to say something. And it turns out we were correct. You know, there's a lot that needs to be said, and there are a lot of people wanting to speak, wanting to say their piece, to go and make up the future for this, you know, which is a complicated place. I think it will be great. I love the idea of waiting 10 years and then seeing who, you know, whose names who are in this issue, or where are they? And, you know, they may be someplace that's not big and famous, but they may be living in an Ireland that has room for them. They may be supporting others. They will be passing this on in some way, which is I think what we wanted. We're about change. You know, this is about pushing a change. But luckily, we're not the only people who want to do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember that meeting where again we were very, I think it was such a nerve-wracking thing because as I said, I think a lot of people like they understand social issues, but it was this sense of, oh, I don't fit into this norm, or I don't like no one is going to like it. So it was just really like asking people to just take that leap of faith. And I remember being like, I hope it's like, no, I don't want all my friends to just apply. I was like, I want random people. Because again, that showcases that you've reached all these untapped groups. And yeah, no, once we started getting submissions in and I knew no one, I was like, I've done it. We've done it. We've managed to get through to everyone that again, isn't even just on social media or anything like that, where a friend of a friend of a friend is saying it. And that was a really effective thing again, to even move beyond things like social media, move beyond like, oh, I know Sandrine, so I'm gonna do it there. It's like, what happens to those people that don't know? So again, like it was really, really like fulfilling to see that it reached so many people. And again, like it's such an exciting thing to see like what happens in the next few years with it. And next I'll come to you, Mary.
So in terms of the reception, I suppose this one's a bit trickier for me. I think all along, definitely like support and interest, and definitely I think curiosity as well. I think people really welcomed it, and it seemed there's something kind of natural. I don't know if it's through the activism or the things that we've been seeing over the last period of time, but I think curiosity was definitely one thing. People curious, like who would contribute. I know I was certainly curious, and I was just kind of thinking there as I was hearing you talk as well that I remember like a good few years ago, before we kind of really kind of changed strategies and how we worked at Ormston House, and you know, we had a big welcome sign on the door, and I was like, everybody knows they're welcome now. And then speaking to some groups, and they were like, that means nothing to our group. You know, so sometimes just putting the invitation out in the world doesn't necessarily mean that people recognize themselves in what you're trying to do. But I think what you've achieved, like by getting people outside of your own kind of, whether it's the academic circle or your personal circle, that it has reached out and people recognize themselves in what you're trying to do. And I loved like the change maker theme, and that so many people saw themselves in that. So that I thought that was really special. But yeah, I was always struck by that somebody saying, you know, oh, I know you have welcome, but I don't know if that means me, you know, and there are other things you're going to have to do until, so that I can see myself in this space. And I think you've achieved that from your first edition of the magazine. So I think it's a great achievement.
Yeah, no, and I think that's where we all really came up with in regards to change makers, because it was how fluid it was. Like change makers for me is completely different to what Gareth would think and what Meg would think. So again, we really wanted something that anyone could do something about, like do it, especially just being a first issue just before we became like, again, when people weren't sure what we were about or anything like that. So that's where it would have ranged from historical moments to like a personal meeting to again just social issues that they see, because it allowed people to just really sit with their own thoughts and really think about it. It's like, okay, so like contemporary Ireland now looks like this, but how am I making the change? Because we, like even in the forward for the magazine, we made sure to like implement that by people writing and by people providing their art pieces. Like inevitably they were change makers because they were taking that first step into, again, so like they didn't even notice that by doing that they were just becoming change makers themselves. And just lastly, Gareth.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you there. I always say it's just the board members, the assistant editors, the people who contributed, they're all change makers because they're after taking that leap. Like I always say, change makers aren't born. They're people that have decided that like enough is enough and they want to see a change in the world. And that's why I think I'm a big advocate for writing as a form of change, or any form of creative work as a form of change. Because now that that magazine is out there, somebody's going to sit down, they're going to read those pieces and hopefully have some sort of epiphany or something about the world. And I think the reception so far has been amazing on Twitter. As Ashley was saying, it's so great to see all the lovely messages that people have been saying about us, and then people taking upon themselves to spread the word about it. like, I know like it's so easy to retweet, but then for people to make their own posts on like LinkedIn or somewhere else on Facebook has been absolutely phenomenal to see as well. And I think, as Mary said, there's always been a curiosity, kind of like, ooh, what are they doing, kind of thing. This should be interesting. Let's see how this goes. And now that we've actually done it, I think there's, from what I can see, there's like a little bit of, they actually did do it. And I'm like, yeah, we weren't that crazy. But so it's, you know, it's been amazing to see so far, and it's just the positivity has been something else. I actually just can't believe it. And what it says about Ireland today, I think it shows that Ireland is ready for change. I think people are hungry for more creative spaces like Ormston House, like the Galpal Collective, like Unapologetic. And as Ashley was saying, like, there can never be enough. There's no such thing as competition. We're all here to help each other. We all have the goals of just helping amplify the voices of the unrepresented in Ireland and their allies as well, who have been helping them try to get representation. And I think it shows that Ireland is ready on a social level, at least, to start that change. And I just hope, like we've been saying, in 10 years' time, we'll be sitting in hopefully a different kind of Ireland in some shape or form and go, God, it all started at that one point. We helped even in our own little way. And I think that's where I'm kind of at the moment, just overwhelmed by positivity and now just more ambition, just to keep going, get bigger, and try and do as much as we can.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree in regards to, I think even now, like contemporary, and it is at a really crucial cultural crossroad right now, where again, like people are questioning like and are addressing the changing nature of Irishness, and it is being done through like such creative ways. So again, like it just exposes and like just showcases how like people have always wanted to do that, but again, it's just like, okay, what spaces are providing that, what spaces are really amplifying that, and what spaces are celebrating it, again, like in an appropriate manner. So that like leads in nicely then to my next question, and this would be for Mary and Ashley. So why do you think spaces like Unapologetic, Ormstone House, Gore Media, and the Galpal Collective are needed today in Ireland? So I'll start with you, Mary, in regards to even Ormstone House especially.
Sure thing. And I am a huge fan of Gore Media and Galpal as well. So which are quite different to Ormston House. Ormston House is a building. And we get about 300 individual requests for space per year. We can't meet demand. We can only accommodate about a third of the requests at the moment. So people need community resources. I mean, as I said, this is built infrastructures. We need places to meet, but after the year and a half we've had, we know that we can meet in different ways. I mean, look where we are, you know, this evening. Also, in terms of Ormston House, you don't have to pay to enter, and you don't have to buy something to be there. And I know that sounds kind of basic, but that's actually increasingly rare. So I think that kind of space is needed. And I think there's an appetite for these initiatives. There's space for it, there's support for it, clearly, because they're opening up the richness of Irish society, right? Like it's more interesting. And I think Unapologetic and Galpal have really opened up these kind of new spaces as well in a different way to Ormston House, you know. And I just, you know, when I was thinking, we've been talking about very much about, you know, the contributors. I'm going off slightly on a tangent here. Sorry, you're talking a lot about the reads, but just like I was just thinking there as you were talking about some of the things that I've read. Actually, I haven't read the full magazine yet, but like Ola's poem at the beginning, and you know that complexity of language, like what a way to open the magazine, like Oscuelga with the and like mixing it up and bringing it, like talking, just showing the richness of our identity was really moving. And I'm a huge fan of Will Keohan's work, and just I've read quite a lot of his work now, and I just find it so moving. And but like what you're doing as well is you're building empathy, you're connecting people through it, and you know that's just so important. And it was just so enjoyable to read. So there's all these tentacles, you know. It's not, you know, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity you've given people to contribute, but like as a reader, I felt really privileged to have these insights into different experiences. So sorry, I went off topic there, but it just, as you were speaking, this is what came to my mind. But one thing I did want to say in terms of, to come back to that idea, that person who I was talking about, the welcome sign before. And I remember them saying to me that it was around the time just after the marriage referendum. And I remember they said something that really stayed with me a long time, where they said, after it was such an overwhelming yes, that we were all so proud of. And then I remember them saying to me, now I have to learn how to belong. And I was like, oh, wow. And, so the vote had gone through, but there was this whole process that they had to go through. And that really stayed with me, and, as I said previously, we have an open door policy in Wormston House. We had this huge welcome sign, our activities are free, but this person said that's not enough, so I really took this advice to heart. So there's still work to be done. I think some of these groups need to see themselves in these spaces. There's that old saying, nothing without us about us, right? And that's more around policy making. But I just think these spaces are crucial, but people want them, they're engaging, and it's just exciting to see. And I have to say, I was kind of fangirling on Ashley when we were I was trying to keep my cool. But it's just like, I feel so excited to be part of this journey with you and to be supporting you. So that's my bit.
I think you raise a really interesting point in regards to what you were saying with the empathy and kind of taking the reader onto that journey. And I think it was something that we definitely wanted to achieve when we were laying out what pieces went first. And I think with the first poem, a lot of the things, whenever it comes to with having a dual identity of being Black and Irish, is that sense of you don't speak Irish, so you're not one of us. So we really wanted that to open up and you have a Black woman speaking in Irish telling you now. So just imagine what the rest of the magazine is. So that was something, again, and it was to just create this sense of understanding and empathy towards people, because I just think, especially with what you said in the last year and a half, I think it's been very hard, and I think it's something so important to kind of humanize these stories and again just centralize them and showcase everyone has gone through something, but it's imagine what a beautiful world to kind of share this and just understand how, as I say, when you see someone from a marginalized community, when you see a minority, there's as much of an Irish person as you are. And that was the most important thing that we really wanted with all of the pieces from the beginning to the very end, to just feel that connection and be oh, I actually never thought about what this experience would be. So I'm glad that someone has written it out there or has spoken it out there or has created a painting for it. And what about yourself, Ashley, in regards to the Gal Pal, why it's needed?
First of all, I want to say thank you to Mary. That was so sweet, but also spaces like Gal Pal don't exist without spaces like Wormstone House. That's just the reality of it. We can't do what we do without you doing what you do. And I think a lot of people, like I said, that's why I said there's no competition. People who maybe aren't in it don't realize how symbiotic the relationship is. And I imagine it's the same thing. You can't do what you do if there's not people who are willing to use those spaces. So I really appreciate what you said. Thank you so much. That means a lot. But I think for me, why more spaces like this are needed from a Gal Pal perspective is we are an arts and media collective, and if you look at media and arts in Ireland, it's always been a predominantly straight white male voice that's being shown. And not to say that those voices aren't important, but my voice is also just as important. And I guess we had just gone to a point where we were done screaming oh my God, give us a space, where we realized, oh wait, we can actually just give ourselves our own space, and went ahead and did that. And I think the hope with Gal Pal is that just to show people the other pockets of society, to show people to give people insight, just this is what my life is like. And it's not just racism. It's I also go to school, I also have to do assignments, I also date, I have a family, I have this is that and the other, and to just show people how, I guess the other half, all of us who are not straight white rich men, essentially, how we live and how we do things and how we experience life. But that being said, there's only so much that we can do. There's only so much that the Galpal Collective can do. There's always going to be pockets of our society that we'll just so happen to miss, not intentionally, but like by nature, like nobody's superhuman. We can't do everything. And the more of these collectives, the more of these spaces that pop up every single day, it just means one more person whose voice is being seen. It means one more person who can look at the world around them, like the way that they're represented, and be like, oh, and or actually it can even say, oh, I'm represented. It can say there's a space in society, the society in which I live in, where I feel seen. And there's nothing worse than not being seen. So that's why, like, Unapologetic and Ormstone House and the Galpal Collective, why we're so important, because people deserve to like feel seen and feel like they're being heard.
Yeah, and I think that's a really poignant part. And I think one of the things I love about Galpal Collective was, I remember when I first got to know you and Aisha, it was again where it was last year, and BLM was like very like pressing, and everywhere you went on media, you know, it was racism, racism, racism. But then I stumbled upon Galpal, and they were just talking about dating and this, and like again, it was showcasing that Black people are so much more than that. You know, it's because I remember just feeling like that drain, like being so drained, but then going on to this publication, which was showcasing such different pieces and even duality from such a different element of it. And again, it does become very refreshing, because it's like, oh, so I don't have to just talk about this. I can write about this and that. And I definitely think it was something that had inspired me to like, I remember when I was writing about like Love Island, but then like using post-colonial theory, I was like, see, Galpal, like they do that. They're able to take like heavy things and like put them just in conversation with normalized things. So it's a really important element of it. And just the next question then, I'll just point it towards Gareth and Meg. So like there appears to be a shift in Irish media where minority voices are being centralized in the media. So like, why do you think Unapologetic can fit into this shift and just this conversation that's currently happening? So I'll start with you, Gareth.
I think Unapologetic, I think where does it fit into that? It's just like you said, like literally at 1 a.m. a little 11-year-old girl was like, I want to have this published in a magazine. I think Unapologetic, I want it to be a home for everybody, no matter their age, no matter what, anything. And I think that's where we kind of fit in. Is I want it to kind of be almost like a home for the ones that can't find a home. That kind of media and that kind of art, like I said before, the amount of people that said, oh, I just kind of had this, I didn't know what to do with it. I want to give those little places a home, because that's what I always find with my writing. And I think how we can fit into that conversation is just showing that everyone has a voice. That's what I want to show, no matter your age, no matter your background. Like I want to show that everyone from academics to somebody who just wrote a scribble down on a page one day can contribute to the conversation. And I just really hope we can do that. And I hope Unapologetic gets big enough that we can show that to the whole nation. Like, I know we're in this great wave of positivity now, but I'm also kind of conscious of that, like we kind of, what would you say, interact with those circles anyway. So there's a slight bit of an echo chamber that I'm just kind of conscious of. So I'm hoping that we just become a place where somebody can come and say, look, everyone has a voice. This place is doing it. We can do it too. And they start their own project, maybe in film or TV, that shows that if one place can do it, why can't we? And we become that example for future projects.
Yeah, and what about yourself, Meg? You're muted.
We couldn't go through a whole hour without there being one moment of somebody saying, oh, you're muted. So I just thought I would do that for us all. No need to thank me. Now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, Garrett's point that if one thing exists out there, then it becomes easier for the next thing. Is I hope a really good one, and that speaks to Mary's and Ashley's points too, and as Ashley says, there's a lot of room. It's not. There's no artificial limit to how many things people can say, but also how complicated people are. I mean, one of the things that I really like about the magazine is that there's not one point of view represented in the magazine. And, you know, just as there's not one way of coming at something. So I think, speaking about Will Cohan, whose work I also really admire, Will kind of makes the point in his piece that there's an awful lot of people who are objects in media, who are objects in discourse. And what we're hoping to do, and what we're doing, is just making room for subjects. So what is it really like to be whoever you happen to be? And also, whoever you happen to be in this island, changing Ireland by just being who you are and saying what's really there for you to say. The kind of, I mean, authenticity is the word that gets bandied about and is kind of hard. But for people to just be who they actually, what they actually find to say about themselves and others, we're open to that.
And that's definitely like one of the core element of Unapologetic. Like we always had this tagline of just like existing unapologetically, just be yourself. And again, like there's a power in that, and there's a power of just being like, I have something to say, which could be completely different from what Gareth has, or Sandrine has, or Meg, Ashley, or Mary. But again, it's still something that is contributing to the changing nature of Irishness. It's still something that's contributing to the Irish discourse. So just the last question, just very briefly then, like, what do you think the future holds for Unapologetic? So I'll come to you first, Mary.
I'm going to start really small and say I'd love to be in a room all together. That would be really nice at some point. You've made this breakthrough space, I feel, and I'm really curious to see how like you shape it with and through the contributors. So I'm curious to see like what collaborations and innovations comes from this. I'd love to see like stronger ties to grow what you've done. I'd like to see us getting some funding, get some payment for you guys to make it sustainable. Sorry to get like super nitty gritty about it, but also for the contributors could be really exceptional as well. And I like, you know, to see some real world events come out through this as well, for people to be in a room together. And yeah, I mean, there's so much potential in the pages, like all these contributors are, it's an extraordinary group of people as well that you've brought together. But in terms of the future for Apologetic, as I said, the next thing I would really love to see is a group of people in a room together, if possible.
Definitely up for that. I'll come to you next, Meg.
I think the thing that struck me was I have a kind of mental list of other topics that I'd really love to get explored. So okay, we did this one. Now I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about social justice and the environment, for example. You know, I'm ready for other foci to come to the fore. I think it would be cool to be open to having thematic threads show up from the community. So if people say, you know what, we really want an issue about this. This is where this is an unsolved problem we really need to work on. Let's do that. So I suppose that's my hope, is that we can tackle other complicated issues, you know, with a formula that we've got of interdisciplinarity, unmitigated support, and from different strands. I mean, like, I'd love to, you know, I have no idea how this would work, I'd love to see some dance. I don't know how you do dance online, but there, we've got one spoken word piece, and it'd be cool to see more different kinds of things, and to really let creativity run wild.
Yeah, no, there's so much room for, again, it's like the 20 million issues to come in. And again, like with what you're saying, like with the different forms of expression, so like even theater, anything like that, there's so much room for that. And I'll come to you next, Gareth.
Yeah, I think it's the same what Meg was saying. And what Mary was saying, I just want to see it get bigger, like all in one room. Wouldn't that be amazing? So I'd love to get that. And with that comes, if we can all get into one room, once all the restrictions have been lifted, then we can have like dances, we can have music, we can just, I know, socialize, I suppose. So I just want to see it get bigger in that sense, have in-person events. And I think I hope for the future then we can become a place that if we were to get enough funding, that we can springboard something else, that we can support another person just coming out of college, or just who has this idea, anybody. And I hope that someday they can come to us, like we've come to Ormston House and the Galpad Collective, and they go, we have this amazing idea. And I hope we're in a position where we can go, well, everyone thought we were crazy, so we'll jump on this as well. So like, so that's my hope for the future, that we can offer that help to other people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just lastly then, Ashley?
It's kind of a hard one, because I think like all of the points have been said, but I think for me, my main hope would be that I would love to see Unapologetic to become a community. And I think we've been limited because of the fact that we are like all online, and like it's very isolating, but like the whole point of change is to bring community. And like, yeah, that's where I'd like us to get to that point where it feels like we're not individuals in our room who are just doing work and submitting it to a thing, that it really, really connects people. And people, I think so many issues that are in this country right now come from isolation, just come from the fact that people, like, they don't know their neighbors, they don't know the names of the people that they go to school with, and like little mundane things like that. And I just hope that Unapologetic brings enough change where, like, yeah, just that we build community, that people stop being strangers, and that would be my hope.
And there's definitely power in community, and I think that's something that you're definitely right. I think, yeah, online it's limited that, but again, it's something that, like, when the launch happened yesterday, it's like, look what we've achieved so much. Like when it came to just doing it online, doing with limited resources, like imagine what like it's going to look like next year, or the year after. Like, again, it did showcase that like there was a need for that. Like, and again, it as Meg had said, it reaffirmed our guess of this whole project. It reaffirmed that, and it reaffirmed like the importance of looking at those voices in the fringe of society who, again, have just been told, like, maybe your story doesn't fit here, your story doesn't fit here. Like, just the power and the magnitude of change like that makes. And again, just like with how like all the contributors, board members, assistant editors, everything like that, by taking a leap of faith in us, like it did create change. And again, it's like, it's still surreal like that it's out, and like, you know, we're able to have a conversation, but it just showcases like just like the importance of having like cultural spaces, and the importance of just speaking out, and again, just really reaffirming like how everyone's voice matters. So like, it's a beautiful thing, and like it really gives me so much hope for like the future. And there's like, again, there's so many issues we're going to be covering, so like it's only the beginning. So but again, thank you so much to Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival and Smashing Times for having us. I don't know, Gareth, if you want to say any final words.
Just thank you again to our wonderful panelists tonight, and everyone who's joining us either by Zoom or live on Facebook. Thank you for dropping in to listen to us have this conversation. And once again, thank you to all the contributors, the assistant editors, and to Tony, who, without all of you, there would have been no magazine. It would have just been myself, Sandrine, and Meg talking to ourselves. So thank you all very much for that.